Hi everyone, Somebi here. I am so excited to be here with you all. Obviously, COVID has put a bit of a damper on things, as I would love to be there with you all in person at Humber College. But it is really interesting the times we're living in right now. I'm 22, and this is really the first real recession that I have ever lived through. Obviously, just like all of you, I was alive in 2008 during that big recession, but we were all too young to fully understand what was going on, and our parents probably shielded us from the real impact of it all. So COVID is really the first time that I'm experiencing a true recession as an adult. My mother used to say all the time, there are no jobs. I feel like that's all I heard during high school. No jobs, no jobs, no jobs. It is weird to be living in a time where there actually are no jobs, or at least there's a scarcity of jobs. But if we're being honest, the job market has never really been amazing, especially not for new grads. You can't get a job without experience, but you can't get experience without a job. But of course, there are some students that seem to float by unscathed, and society seems to have labeled those people as the ones with connections. They have aunts and uncles and family friends that can help them get those roles. Throughout my life, I've been told that I'm one of those people, though I have no connections, having immigrated to Canada from Nigeria when I was just 7. What I found is that success is really just two things: serious luck and being 2 steps ahead. One is out of your control while the other is within your control. Both require grit and a lot of determination. Most people have the grit and the determination, but they struggle to apply it in a way that matters in the long run. You do well in the work you're given and you excel at school, but what about the bigger picture? What about thinking ahead and having your actions mirror that? You see, I think there's a disconnect between the new graduates that are getting good jobs and those that aren't. Something that we weren't taught in high school or university or college. People say, oh, getting a job is all about who you know, but they don't tell you how to become one of those, oh, I know types of people. They make it seem like it's out of your reach, like a done deal that you didn't get a say in. But that's what we're here to unpack, so bear with me and let's keep going. In 2015, when I came to university, getting a technology degree was all the rage. I was told that I'd been earning good money right out of university. Everyone wants engineers, they said. I'm sure if I asked how many of you were in a science or technology program, it might be like half-ish the room. Over the last few years, even non-STEM programs like business and marketing now have a technical portion, with business majors having to learn SQL and other analyst coding languages, and marketing requiring some digital marketing knowledge. During orientation week at my first year of my university, it used to be even cool for STEM and non-STEM kids to make fun of one another, and hopefully that doesn't happen anymore. But the engineering kids would call art degrees useless, and the non-STEM students would make fun of us for having no social life and constantly being buried in schoolwork. Now look at all of us, all swimming in the same pond. Before the university degree, you really only needed a high school diploma to be able to get a good paying job that could support you and your family. And before that, all you really needed to know was how to read and write, and you'd be good to go. Of course, if we were to go down the road of asking ourselves what changed, we'd be here to like 2024 or some far off time when COVID seems like a distant memory, fingers crossed. But a lot did change and a lot didn't change. During my internship at Deloitte, I experienced the worst version of imposter syndrome ever. I had only just found out what the Big Four meant and was starting to learn how much of a catch it was to work for one of these big consulting firms, because people saw it as a way to propel their career. But during my first few weeks, I felt so out of place. I felt like I didn't belong. The people there were nice, of course, make no mistake, but it was all so daunting, and I couldn't help but feel incredibly dumb. I've never really been the smartest kid when it comes to the books. I work hard, but that straight A+ doesn't really come easy to me. I did extremely well in my first and second year, but by the time I got to third year, even getting class average seemed like such a huge feat. It sucked, and ultimately my inability to excel in school like I used to was a huge hit on my self-esteem. The summer of my third year also happened to be when I got my first tech internship at a pure technology company. This was the first time I experienced imposter syndrome. I was 19 and I didn't know it was called imposter syndrome, but I do remember coming home after my first day, going straight to my parents' room and telling them that I didn't belong there. That there were so many more intelligent people, some of whom I knew, that would be much more deserving of the opportunity that I'd been given. I didn't get the role conventionally either, which made things even harder to swallow. I drove around that spring handing out my resume to buildings in the GTA that looked corporate and businessy because I couldn't stand the thought of spending an entire summer doing nothing. So what motivated me to act like a saleswoman and go door to door handing out my resume? It's the same thing that motivates me now. I was terrified of being mediocre, going with the flow and doing what everyone else was doing. You do well in school and then you go home for 4 months, spend time with friends, blah, blah, blah. Being like everyone else it wouldn't make for a good story. And I love telling stories. Getting further in life, I found, is all about how well you can tell a story that people want to hear. If you haven't already realized, the first few steps of getting that interview and eventually landing that job is knowing how well to sell yourself. Asking yourself, how do I make people as excited as I am about what I'm saying, about my journey and how I got to where I am? How do I make people want to be a part of my journey? Long story short, when I landed at Geotab's door that summer, they took a chance on me even though I had no prior experience. And even with my lack of skills and experience, I walked in there and I asked to speak with a recruiter. We had a great conversation and she suggested that I leave my resume with her. She emailed me the next day to set up a follow-up interview, a tour of the office, and a chat with my would-be boss. The interview took place a few days later, and the following day I got the job. So how did a third-year chemical engineering and biochemistry student with no prior experience get a software engineering job? Well, you see, I did what I knew best. I told a story. I spoke about my career journey thus far and how I had originally wanted to be a doctor. And I spoke about what I had learned from my first 2 years of experience in the medical world. I talked about the transferable skills I'd picked up from being a research assistant and a pharmacy assistant, and the problem-solving skills I'd learned both in and outside of the classroom. To sum it up, I made sure to include 3 things into everything I was saying. I was a constant learner that was ready to be challenged in any area. I can work well in a team, and I'm super excited for this opportunity to be a part of this organization. Needless to say, I was a fraud. Or at least I felt that way after my first day, my first week really. I had walked into their office buildings in April, and in just 2 short weeks, I had been given a summer internship. I had gotten lucky. Very, very lucky. I knew that, and it made me feel terrible knowing that there are people out there more skilled and just as resilient, and probably much more in need of the job that I had just gotten. I wish I could tell you that the feeling of imposter syndrome goes away, but it really doesn't. And quite frankly, why should it? Is imposter syndrome not synonymous with being in a new environment where you feel like you have to push yourself, to prove yourself? I haven't garnered enough experience to come to a definite conclusion, but when imposter syndrome starts creeping in, I try to take it as an invitation for me to immerse myself in whatever it is I'm doing and prove to myself that I can be just as good as anyone else in the room. Michelle Obama spoke about imposter syndrome during one of her interviews. You can search it up if you like. And although our experiences are very different, she essentially said that those people in the room that feel like they belong there only feel that way because they've been told that all their lives. Her response was race-related and still very valid, but I can't help but wonder if in today's world, belonging has less to do with the color of your skin and more to do with your charisma and your natural ability to make people smile, make them like you, and ultimately make them want to work with you. I spoke previously about how during my first few weeks at Deloitte, I had terrible imposter syndrome. It was crippling, and I didn't sleep for a week. I would call my dad crying and he would tell me, people hire for potential because you're teachable and show growth. A therapist I had only gone to once at a time said that she'd always thought that it was a flaw in the system, that the better talkers were able to get ahead more so than the person who's actually right for the job. God, even repeating those words hurt me because I know she didn't mean it to be hurtful, but she was validating everything I'd felt, that there were more deserving people all around me. And it didn't help that once I changed my LinkedIn header and made the obligatory "I'm starting a new job" post, I was being reached out to by other students that had applied to the role but had lost it to me. Looking through their profiles, I couldn't comprehend why. Why me? That was a question I asked myself during my first few weeks of working there. A close friend of mine actually made the comment that if anything, I should feel proud that I had gotten the role when compared to those whom I felt were more experienced. But you see, when it comes to work, I can deal with the vague problems, but personally, I just wanted to know why. I never did ask my interviewers the why question, partly because that would be incredibly intimidating, but also because I was scared that by asking them, they might realize that I didn't actually deserve the role and fire me on the spot. So I hunkered down and I put my all into that role. I told myself that I deserved to be there just as much as anyone else, and I said it enough times till I believed it. And each time I got a great review on my performance evaluation, I believed it a little bit more. What I've come to realize is that I'm not as book smart as maybe the next straight A students, but I am people smart and I know how to work situations. My experiences have taught me that being a people person will get you a lot further in life than knowing how to solve a math equation. And I think that's where the disconnect is, the one I was chatting about earlier. I've been wondering why the most, and I mean the most intelligent people that are nice and great to work with, find it so hard to get the good jobs. Why are they the ones that have to decide between settling for a measly salary or going back to school and further in debt to get more specialized and hopefully come out and land a better paying job? I mean, I'm not a gambler, but that's the biggest gamble I've ever seen, yet it's completely normalized in our society. Of course, there's nothing wrong with getting a master's or even a PhD, but when you're doing it only because you can't find a job, when you're only doing it based on the hopes that because you're now more knowledgeable, maybe someone will hire you and pay you exactly what you're worth. We take bets every day in life, some big, some small, some noticeable, some not. But when your bet requires you to first take out a loan without knowing whether or not there will be an adequate return on your investment, then you have to ask yourself if it's really worth it. The other option, of course, would be to try to get that experience, preferably while you're still a student, I think. I find it kind of interesting that for as long as I can remember, people have always made fun of the cycle. You can't get experience without a job, but you can't get a job without experience. But people still choose to go through university without getting any experience. And I say this as a person who initially dropped out of my school's co-op and internship program because I just wanted to graduate like every other engineering student. We've been told for years that with our engineering degree, it would be so easy to get a good paying job. I eventually chose to stay the extra year in school doing internships, but I chose not to register for my school's co-op program. Why? Well, because the impressionable 18-year-old me in second year read a comment on Reddit that told incoming and young engineering students like myself not to bother with co-op. They said that in the capital city, you could easily find an internship for yourself via networking. Easy being the operative word. I later found out that it wasn't easy at all, but I took a chance on myself anyways, and I bet on myself. Whether I was looking for medical experience or making the switch to technology, I was going to do it on my own gamble and see where it will take me. It just takes one yes in that field you want to go into, just one yes. And that yes is so much easier to get while you're still a student. I drove around for over a week till I landed on Geotab's door, and they took a chance on me and helped me jumpstart my career in technology, which eventually helped me land my role at the government and then Deloitte and so on. There's no difference between me and the incredibly smart people I've met in university, on LinkedIn, and in this room. I mean, no difference except for your 4.0 GPAs and your ability to learn anything in class in the fraction of time it would probably take me. Yet there is a disconnect, because some find it easier to focus on what's in front of them, the midterm, the group project, than it is to think ahead, to think big. I knew in my third year that I didn't want to become a doctor, and I eventually decided that I wanted to be in technology. And after my Geotab internship, I realized that I still wanted to be in technology, but not as a software developer. And after my Deloitte internship, I realized that I wanted to go into something similar to technology consulting. So you see, even without knowing exactly what I wanted to do, I continued to network and find internships that centered around technology. I worked backwards, learning what I liked and what I didn't like from each internship till I landed on what I felt would be the best fit for me. You'd be doing yourself such a huge disservice if you chose to only focus on what's in your immediate surrounding. You're all so damn intelligent, each one of you. I believe it, and I sure hope you believe it too. We all call ourselves ambitious, but how many of us actually act like it? Be forward thinking and let your actions and thoughts reflect that. Force yourself to approach life like the dynamic, bold individual you are, and that's exactly who you become. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.